Welcome! I've gathered you all here to tell you a story. Now this is going to be a story about Thor. Have you ever heard about Thor? The god of thunder. Thor was a powerfully built man. He was tall, was wide over his shoulders, and he was strong. Now, Thor, he used to travel the skies in a big cart drawn by these two giant monstrous goats. And he used to fly above the heavens. Now the big wheels, they rumbled and made so much noise that was thunder. And his hammer, called Mjolnir, shot lightning. And that is why he was the god of thunder. Now, Thor had one problem about that. Because everybody knew when he arrived. They could hear him from miles away. Thor is coming. Put on your best clothes. Put out the best meat. Tidy. Clean this place. It's filthy. A god is coming. So Thor got a little tired of that. So one day, he decided that he wanted to travel the world without anybody knowing who he was. So he left his cart at home. He changed his shape to that of a young, thin boy, and his hammer, because he put it in a bag, closed it, and hung it behind him on his belt. Because he had to hide his hammer. There is only one hammer like it. And if you see Mjolnir, you know that that is Thor. It's a dead giveaway. So he hid it. And then he started to walk the earth. He started in Asgard, which is the home of the gods. And he walked right through it, and he entered Midgard, which is the home of the humans, our world. And he walked clear across it into Jotunheimen, which is the home of the giants. Now he had walked for many moons, he had walked for days and nights, he had walked far and he had walked wide, he had slept outside, under bushes, woken by rain, and if he was really lucky, he found a cave which he can sleep in, well, after he had thrown out the bear, of course. So when he got to Jotunheimen, and he got to the coast, he saw a farm laying there. And Thor knew who lived there. It was a giant named Hyme. Thor had heard about Hyme from before. He knew that Hyme, he was a big, strong, powerful giant, but he was greedy and stupid. So Thor, he wanted to sleep inside. He was tired of being woken by rain. So he went up and knocked on the giant's door. Hyme opened up the door, looked around, and couldn't see anyone until Thor said, "Giant, down here!" Hyme was surprised, because usually a human doesn't come knocking on a giant's door. Now what Hyme usually does when he sees a human, he does this, stomps him flat. But he was intrigued. Never before had a human came knocking on his door. So he decided to listen to this human, this young, thin boy. And Thor started speaking. "Oh giant, oh powerful giant, please, I've walked far and I've walked wide, and now I'm tired of sleeping outside. Please, let me in. Give me a roof over my head. Let me sleep next to your fire. and maybe something to eat, and I will be in your debt. Hymir thought, wow, this is a brave human boy. I'll let him in. I'll let him sleep here, and I'll even give him some food. So he invited Thor in. He started making him some food. Now remember that this was still Thor. Even though he looked like a thin, small boy, he wasn't. Thor could eat his weight in meat. So Thor, he ate everything that Hyme put before him. And he asked for more and more and more. And beer, meat, fish. And eventually he was full. So he laid down to the fire, this thin stick of a man, and this huge belly. Hymir was yet again surprised. He didn't know humans could eat that much. So he said to Thor, young boy, now you've eaten all my food, you've eaten all my meat, you've eaten all my fish, I've even given you my porridge to eat. Now I have nothing left. So tomorrow morning I have to go fishing. Oh, giant, that sounds fun. I love fishing. Maybe I could join you. Well, of course, young boy, you may join me, but I'm going out far at sea. It's going to be cold. It's going to be wet. And I don't want any complaining that you want to go back to shore. Oh, no, giant. I'm not going to be the first one to want to go back to land. Trust me. So they agreed. They went to bed and rose up really early in the morning. And they prepared the boat. Now, Hyme said to Thor, young boy, I only have bait for myself. So if you want some bait, you'll have to go and get some. Not a problem, thought Thor. He started looking around Hyme's farm, and eventually he found Hyme's big herd of cows. Now remember that these were now no ordinary cows. We were in giants' territory, so these were giant cows. Thor, remember, he was still strong, he was still Thor. So he went up to the biggest, strongest, baddest bull there was, looked them straight in the eyes, which is really impressive because cows look that way. But he's a god, he can do that. So he planted his feet, grabbed a hold of the horns, and twisted his head clean off. And then he put the head in sack, closed it, and went down to Hyme. They got into the boat and they started rowing. And yet again, Hyme was surprised. The strength of this young thin boy. Because Thor, he rowed so hard that the boat skipped across the water. After a few hours, Hyme spoke up. Young boy, this is the place. This is the place I usually fish. There are big, fat, juicy fish here. This is the perfect spot. Oh no, giant. We're going further out at sea, where there are bigger, fatter, juicier fish. So Thor, he just kept on rowing. The boat kept on skipping. And after another couple of hours, Hyme started to get nervous. Young boy, we have to stop now because if you go much further, we'll get to the end of the world and we can fall off. And I don't want to fall off. No, giant, we're going a little bit further where the biggest, fattest, juiciest fish of them all are. So Thor, he kept on rowing and the boat kept on skipping. After a few more hours, they started to see the edge of the world where everything falls off. Here, giant, this is the place. Here we can find the biggest, fattest, juiciest fish of them all. So Hyme, he pulled out his fishing rod. Now remember, Hyme is a giant, so he has, of course, a giant fishing rod. And the problem with a giant fishing rod is that you can't really fish cod or salmon or herring because they're too small. The hook is like as big as my arm. So Hyme, he fished whales. Thor, he didn't have a fishing rod. Thor didn't have fishing line. He only had the bull's head. So he started looking around the boat and thinking, what can I use? And suddenly, he spotted the anchor. So he picked up the anchor, took out the oxen's head, put it on, and the anchor had this big, thick, long rope. And then he threw it out at sea, while having the rope around his hands. Now, out in the ocean, there is a giant sea serpent called the Midgard serpent. This snake, this sea snake, is so big that it lies all around the world and bites its own tail. It is the biggest monster the world has ever known. And as soon as the bull's head hit the waters, it could smell the blood. And quick as lightning, it swallowed the anchor and the bull's head whole. And Thor was surprised at the speed of this beast, so his hand slammed against the railing of the boat. And all this managed to do was piss Thor off. So he yanked back, and the anchor lodged in the jaw of the great serpent, and it became angry. No one in the history of the world has ever dared to fish the Midgard serpent. No one had been brave enough. So it started fighting against it, thrashing, twirling, and yanking on the rope. And all across the world, you could feel the earth rumbling. And out into the oceans, there were waves as big as mountains. Hyme was terrified. He was so afraid. He didn't know what this crazy young boy was doing, trying to fish the Midgard serpent. Thor, meanwhile, just kept on pulling on that rope, fighting against the Midgard serpent with all his strength. Pulling, dragging, and down into the depths, you could start to see these two big, red, glowing eyes coming closer and closer to the surface. The great world serpent was on its way. Hyme sat cowering behind in the boat, and he was so afraid that he actually pissed himself. The big, cowardly giant. And a giant can piss a lot. Thor kept on pulling, and suddenly the Midgard serpent rose above the waters and looked down upon the boat. Thor tried to pull it down to get it to the railing. Eventually, he succeeded. The big head of the Midgard serpent lay on the railing of the boat. Thor took the rope around his hands, fastened it securely, and then he started fumbling behind himself. He wanted to take out his hammer. He wanted to slay the Midgard serpent. Hyme, he was so afraid that he started crying. Not only had he pissed his pants, but he had pooped them as well. And that's a lot of poop. He was so afraid, he was panicking. He didn't know what to do. This insane thin boy was fishing the Midgard serpent and had him on the railing. He was sure he was going to die. So he pulled out his knife and cut the rope. The Midgard serpent got away. It vanished beneath the waves again. Now Thor, he was angry before, but now he became enraged, furious with anger. he became so angry that he became completely calm, turned around to Hyme, looked him in the eyes, and for the first time in Hyme's miserable life, he could see death into the eyes of the young boy. Thor punched him so hard he flew all the way into land, and when he landed, he made such an impact that he created a whole new valley. Thor was alone in the ocean. He had used so much strength during his battle with the Midgard serpent that his feet actually had crashed through the boat, and thankfully, since he's a god, he just extended his legs so he could stand on the ocean floor. And he was wearing the boat as kind of trousers. So he ripped the boat apart and he started walking into land. You would think that Thor was disappointed, but not so, because Thor, he had proven that he could fish the Midgard serpent. He had proven that he could get the head of the great world serpent down onto the railing of the boat. And if it hadn't been for the coward Hyme, he could have slain the Midgard serpent. And right before he came to land, he had one final thought. This is the greatest fishing story ever told. And that is the story of Thor's fishing trip.